This is lesson 4, Algebra 1, lesson 29, graph using three-part tables. The objective students will graph using three-part tables. Vocabulary. Function rule is an equation that creates an output for every input. Remember what I talked about earlier when we had a math machine or any type of machine. A function is a machine. You put ingredients in, you get one thing out, right? So if I put like tortillas, meat, and salsa, what comes out of the other end? A taco, right? So the same thing with math. We would have each problem or each equation is like a machine. You put an ingredient in or ingredients in, you get one ingredient or one output out, okay? Then there's a function. Notation is the way we write a function. It's really, say this thing called f of x. This thing here says f of x. This means the function of x, or f of x is how we would say it, okay? These are the steps to graph a function. If you're on the video, you could pause it. That way you could see it. You could write it down. Okay, graphing. Just watch right now. Pencils down. Everyone, pencils down. Okay, so number one. They're going to say graph a function. Let's say it was graph this. F of x is equal to x plus 1. Right up here. This would be all that they give you. You don't know anything about this yet. This is just here to help us start this process. The first thing we want to do is make sure f of x or y is on one side of the equation. So over here, this f with the parentheses x, what this means is f of x. You just say function of x. So the way we say this is f of x. Let's all repeat f of x.
F of x.
F of x.
Good. F of x. And then also f of x, whenever we see that, it's also equal to y. So we could interchange this with y. Alright? So it says f of x is equal to x plus 1. We want to graph it. So the first thing we want to make sure is it's on its own side. Okay? So it is on its own side. Then the next thing we're going to do is create a three-part table and pick three inputs. Okay? So we have three. We're going to make a table. And the three inputs we want to write, these are the three that I pick, -2, 0, and 2. So we could pick -2, 0, and 2. These are the three inputs, okay? So we're going to put in our inputs. Whenever we have inputs, we put them into this machine right up at the top here. This is our math machine this time. So we're going to put the inputs of x, and then we're going to get a y out. Okay? So the way it works is we start with writing the equation y is equal to, instead of x, this time I'm going to write -2 plus 1. Okay? -2 plus 1 is equal to -1. So y is equal to -1. So whenever we have our input of -2, we have an output of -1. Second one, 0. If we put in 0 here, we put y is equal to 0 plus 1. So 0 plus 1 is equal to 1. So whenever I put 0 into my machine, I get a 1 out. So I make a coordinate pair right here. Okay, continuing. Everyone's watching still. Everyone look up here. Okay, no writing. Everyone's looking still. If I put in 2 into this machine, I go y is equal to 2 in its own parentheses plus 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. So whenever we put 1 in, we get 3 out. 1, 3. Okay? So those are the coordinates. Now step 4 is we graph using 3 points on the points on this third column. So I'm going to make an x and y axis on my graph paper, so I'll try to do this neatly as possible. Here's my x-axis, and here's my y-axis. Okay. And I'm going to plot these points, -2, -1. We go to -2, up -1, or I'm sorry, down -1. So it's down here. That's our first point, so I'm going to plot a point there. Second point is 0, 1. Starting at 0, I'm going to go up 1, so that's where my second point should be. And then my third point is 1, 3. So I'm starting at the origin, go 1 to the right, and then 3 up. I should have a point right there. The 1, 3? Oh, it's supposed to be 2, 3, because my input was 2. It's supposed to say 2, by the way. 2, 3. We should have a point right here. And you notice at this point, what do you notice about these 3 points? They're all in a straight line. So the last thing you do is you take your straight edge and you just draw a straight line. Okay, and draw arrows at the end, and that's how we draw a line. So this graph up here, f of x is equal to x plus 1, this is the graph of the line, okay? The whole purpose of this is to graph the line, okay? What's the purpose today? To graph the line. Graph the line, good. Okay, let's do another one. Number 2, watch as I do it again. Ready? Here we go. Number 2, you're still watching? You're still watching. We want to graph y is equal to 3x plus 4, so make sure f of x or y is on one side of the equation. It is. It's already on the left side of the equation. Then we make a 3-part table. 3-part table. And we're going to pick 3 inputs. I'm going to pick, you don't always have to pick the same inputs, but I'm picking -2, 0, and 2. So -2, 0, and 2. Okay? And then we write, use these inputs to put into our equation. So y is equal to 3x. X this time is -2 plus 4. 3 times -2 is -6 plus 4. -6 plus 4 is -2. So y is equal to -2. That's our output. So whenever I put -2 in, I get -2 out. Same number comes out. I'm going to put in the next number, 0. Y is equal to 3 times x, this time it's 0, plus 4. 3 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 4 is 4, so y is equal to 4. So our answer is going to be 0, 4. Next one, 2. Y is equal to 3 times 2 plus 4. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 4 is 10. So whenever I put 2 in, I get 10 out of my machine. Okay, those are the coordinates. We just picked 3 numbers and we evaluated the function with the 3 points. We just figured out the 3 answers here. Okay, now we use these 3 coordinates to plot into our graph. So I make a graph. I'm noticing that all these numbers are mostly in the first quadrant, so I'm just going to focus on the first quadrant. Draw my y-axis first, then my x-axis. It doesn't really matter which axis you use. Okay, plot my first point, -2, -2. It's right here. Then 0, 4, right here. Then it's 2, 10. Which is all the way up here. What do we notice about all these 3 points? They're in a straight line, right? So now I'm going to draw a straight line through my points. Draw arrows at the end. And we have our line of the equation. Okay, you just graphed 2 lines. Okay, what's the purpose of all this?
To get the straight line.
To graph, right? To get the straight line, right? So this equation looks like this on graph paper. Okay? So I want the 1s to tell 2's about number 1, 2's to tell the 1's about number 2. Ready, set, go. Alright, let's work on number 3 now. Number 3. Let's just work on the table first. The table first. Work on the table first. Shh. Okay, before you get going on graphing, I want to work on the table on number 3 first. Okay, so what part goes up here? What goes up there? You just rewrite it, the function, but instead of function, you're just going to write y is equal to 2x minus 1. We're all making a table right now. Okay, just making the table. What numbers go on the left here? We have -2, 0, and 2 on the left. Those are your inputs. Those are your ingredients, okay? So I'll give you a few seconds to write the table. You're not filling in the table, you're just going to make the table. Okay, so now that you got the table all written down, Start with your first input. So you go y is equal to 2 times negative 2 minus 1. Alright? 2 times negative 2 is negative 4 minus 1. Negative 4 minus 1 is equal to negative 5. So when we put negative 2 into our machine, we get a negative 5 out. Okay? The next one, 0. What happens when I put 0 into my machine? Well, I'd write out y is equal to 2 times 0 minus 1. What's 2 times 0, everyone? 0 minus 1 is negative 1. So y is equal to negative 1. So when I put in 0, I get out negative 1. Okay? Next one, what happens if I put in 2? Y is equal to 2 times 2 minus 1. What's my answer going to be? What?
3.
3, right? So if I put in 2, I get a 3. Okay, so now I have my function. What's the next step? Graph it. Okay, so on your whiteboards, on the back of your whiteboards, you could graph this. I have the table up there. Let's have you graph it. I want to see your graphs now. Okay. I'll let you graph. I'll give you about 15 seconds to graph. Okay, on this example, all you had to do was just plot them. So we got negative 2, negative 5. So we got negative 2, and then down 5. So you should be at this point here. Okay. Then the next point is 0, negative 1. And then the third point is 2, 3. And we plot our points and draw your graph. Okay? So that's how you do number 3. Okay, let's look at you do number 4. I want you to do it all the way through. Just the table by yourselves now. Just by yourselves. Table by yourselves now. Number 4. So I put the table up there. You got to fill it in yourself. Don't graph until we look at the table, okay? Everyone's looking at the table. Okay, your table should look like this. Your table should look like that right now. Okay, I want you to graph it. Finish it off. Show me what the graph will look like. Okay, give you about 30 seconds to a minute to do that. Okay, so when you graph it, in case you missed it, take your graphs, the graph paper, you draw your x and your y axes. Draw your x and your y axes as follows. Apply your points. You got negative 2, 3, 0, 4, and 2, 5. Notice they're all in a straight line. And you have your line ready. Okay? Getting a little easier, right? Yeah. Let's do one more. Okay, on number 5 now. We're not going to do number 4, by the way. Okay, what are these two bars called that are around the x? Anyone know what that's called?
Makes it a positive.
Makes it a positive, good, but what is it called when it's called an absolute value. Remember absolute value? Okay, so absolute value of x is how far away a number is from 0. So you basically make it a positive number. So let's say we had y is equal to the absolute value of x. Okay, watch closely right now. What are my inputs on the left, everyone? Negative 2, 0, and 2, right? So we're asking ourselves, what's the absolute value of negative 2? Meaning, how do we make negative 2 positive? Or what's the positive value of negative 2? 2, right? This is actually saying how far is it from 0. So it's just 2. So the answer, y is equal to 2. So then you would write negative 2, 2. Okay? The next one, y is equal to the absolute value of 0. Is 0 positive or negative, or neither? Neither. So your answer is just going to be 0. Y is equal to 0. So you put 0, 0. Okay, next one, 2. Y is equal to absolute value of 2. So you put y is equal to 2. So 2 is the same as 2, right? The answer is always going to be positive, right? So let's graph this. I want you to graph this on your whiteboards, and I want you to tell me, is it all in a straight line or not? Now, all of you should have had this, right? You had, let me draw my x and y axis here. So, x-axis, y-axis, draw some arrows. Okay, we got negative 2, 2, 0, 2, and 2, 2, right? Your lines should look like, one's going to go up. That's not a good line. And the other one's going to go the opposite direction. Okay? This is called an absolute value graph, okay? And we know it's absolute value because there's an absolute value sign in there. So this kind of changes things. But we have a different graph, but same process. You see how the process is the same? Okay? So this is called a three-part table, okay? Now, what did we learn today? We learned how to graph lines. Okay, how do we graph lines? We make a table, pick 3 inputs, solve for those inputs, and then you have 3 coordinates and you graph them. Does that make sense? So what did we learn today? How to what? How to graph a line. How do we graph? We make a table, put inputs, and calculate the outputs. Okay, so 1's still at 2's. What did we learn today? What did we learn today, 1's? What did we learn, 1's? Okay, now 2's explain how do we graph with the steps. Ready? Go.